Convenient for the cops. They didn't have to do anything because they probably wouldn't have done anything anyway. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name's Zukadowski here of WeAreChange.org, and we have a plethora of absolutely crazy news to get into unfolding in Europe right now, as well as some crazy news happening here domestically inside of the United States as Biden looks like he is in some very hot water. We're going to be talking about that, plus a lot more, all here on this independent media broadcast. If you like the shirt that I'm wearing, you could get it on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. And the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast looks like it was originally shared on TikTok under Kevin Jones Reed Gun. You'll see it's the attribution is right there, highlighting some clear white privilege there, as finally and very surprisingly someone was arrested for their snatch and grab operations that didn't work out that well for them. Another thing that's not working too well is, of course, the President of the United States brain. This, as of course he was just questioned after more classified documents were found now in his personal home, with this exchange that is now going viral on the internet.
Mr. President,
Okay.
classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
Let me, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage, okay? So it's not like you're sitting out in the street.
So
but anyway,
was in a locked garage.
yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said earlier this week, people know I take classified documents and classified material seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document. So we're going to see all this.
Jeez. And yeah, the president panicking and trying to read off a carefully written script, messing up many times, doesn't really give you a lot of confidence with what's going on here, as the garage that he keeps talking about being locked down and very secured is one pictured in this image here and many other videos and photos of him that clearly wasn't as secure as he was telling everyone that it was. What were you thinking is the question that I think a lot of people are still asking themselves after this canned, scripted response that absolutely made a lot of people concerned about the reading abilities of the U.S. president. Now, what were these documents related to? What were they connected to? Well, we still do not know in the time of making this video. The first batch of classified documents were taken when he was the vice president of the United States, which he wasn't allowed to do because vice presidents cannot declassify classified documents. All of this as this actually happened a week before the midterm elections and was kept away from the general public by the DOJ that clearly held this story back until now, so they had a more favorable political outcome during the last election. And as Edward Snowden puts it, quote, "The scandal is that the DOJ found out about it a week prior to the midterm elections and chose to suppress the story, conferring a partisan advantage." And I would definitely have to agree with Edward Snowden here. This says, of course, there still is a lot of very serious questions to what really was going on here that a lot of people are waiting for it to be answered. All of this is happening as also right now we're hearing that there is a possibility of a third discovery of classified documents that were mishandled by the current president of the United States. What's really going on here? Is the president forgetful? Is he being set up here? Is he being extorted? Well, who knows? But in the making of this video, we did find out that the Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed a special counsel to investigate Biden's handling of classified documents. And with the government investigating itself and its most favorite political party, you could probably bet your bottom dollar there's going to be a whitewash here, unless there's some external pressure being forced on Biden right now to implement a policy that he doesn't want to do. What's going on here? Who knows? But one thing I do know is that you should sign up right now to LukeUncensored.com, where we are going to be doing a special broadcast right after this one about some very important issues that, of course, we cannot discuss here on this particular broadcast. We're going to be talking about a lot of very salacious hot button issues that we cannot discuss on this particular platform. It is not a family-friendly show, and the topics are spicier and surrounding some topics that we wouldn't be able to get away with talking about here. So we just created our own platform. We're also going to be continuing our AMA, specifically through our forum, where we will be able to communicate with you, answer your questions one-on-one, a part of a larger group members discussion. There's a lot of members. We have a lot of questions, but I made sure that I'm going to be getting through all of your questions, and that's going to be happening in the later part of today's broadcast, only exclusively for the many members of LukeUncensored.com. If you're not yet a member, sign up right now, and you get a lot of exclusive perks and exclusive offers and meetups that, of course, no one else will get, except for the people who are members of LukeUncensored.com. See you there right after this broadcast, as of course we are going to be very busy next week, specifically paying close attention to the Davos World Economic Forum meeting happening in Switzerland, where today we're finding out that the government there is allocating 5,000 Swiss military personnel, armed soldiers, that will be deployed all throughout Switzerland, specifically in Davos, the highest place in all of Europe, that will be protecting the many international globalists, including, of course, the governor of Illinois, the governor of Michigan, the governor of Georgia. John Kerry, of course, is very excited for his private jet trip over to Switzerland, where, of course, a lot of powerful people will come, congregate, and meet with the top bankers, top corporate heads, and billionaires, discussing larger plans and schemes in order to benefit themselves while screwing everyone else over. And with them screwing so many people over, they need a lot of protection. And this is why 5,000 soldiers that are trained to, of course, take out other enemies will be setting a Gestapo-like lockdown of the entire city, looking for journalists that, of course, do not approve of them in order to target and harass them, just like they did many years before. This, as the Swiss soldiers have also been authorized to use coercive police measures in order to carry out their, quote, respective tasks of hassling and targeting journalists that dare to question the legitimacy of internationalists telling you how to live your life. This, as the World Economic Forum has been caught in scandal after scandal, and whether it's FTX, whether it's about the deliberate destruction of Sri Lanka and many other countries under its own policies that they have implemented, we have to understand that there is a lot going on here that deserves a critical eye on, and there's going to be thousands of soldiers preventing, of course, that from happening. This, of course, as another partner of the World Economic Forum, Ukraine is also going to be in attendance for this meeting, a country right now involved in a larger proxy war between the East and the West. All of this as we're getting the latest satellite photos and videos of Soledar, a city next to the key fighting region of Bakhmut, which looks like it has been absolutely leveled to the ground. As of course the fighting there is very intense, we are hearing that the Russians have taken over this city, and it looks like the majority of the fighting is happening in this key city. This, as of course already multiple offers for peace talks have been declined, specifically because of the Western influence in this proxy conflict, which is only going to be expanded during Ukraine's participation in this upcoming Davos meeting, as already major financial institutions like BlackRock have signed lucrative contracts that will be rebuilding from the rubble, from the destruction, from all the weaponry and bombs that is currently being launched in that poor country. All of this as yet another partner of the World Economic Forum, Canada, a country where even Klaus Schwab has openly bragged about infiltrating half of the government there, is now proposing a new law that would impose fines up to $200,000, seize the property of, and even put people in jail, specifically for, quote, giving out what they're calling misleading information to patients or the public. Yes, you heard that correctly. The World Economic Forum hijacked government of Canada now wants to put your doctor or professor in jail for giving out information that they deemed to be incorrect. Forget about debate, forget about the scientific method. If the government doesn't like what you say, they want to ruin your life and throw you in jail. And what else would you expect by a government infiltrated by the World Economic Forum? This, as even here in the United States, in a moment's eye, there has been a unanimous agreement on a very single niche issue within a span of just 24 hours about banning gas stoves. And whether it's the Biden administration, whether it's AOC or the corporate media, they are regurgitating the same talking points, calling specifically for a national ban on gas stoves. This after they're citing many studies done by groups that, of course, have a conflict of interest in the studies that they have done. There, of course, is a larger profit motive in here, and I would like to say personally here for the record, I don't think the federal government is going to be doing a ban on gas stoves, but I do think they are going to restrict your ability to get gas stoves in the future, just like New York State is trying to implement, and California has already implemented a draconian and very racist policy, especially against ethnic minorities that depend on gas stoves for their food, with specifically being able to use things like woks and other cultural foods that simply cannot be produced by electric stoves. But in New York, just like in California, they are planning to ban gas stoves in new buildings and commercial buildings in the near future in order to comply with, of course, eliminating, quote, greenhouse gas output. Again, a lot of this is not really being done for your safety, for your protection, because the government doesn't give a damn about your safety or your protection. This, as of course many Americans already heat their homes and depend on gas for electricity, specifically for heat, not just for cooking their own food. Predominantly a lot of poor people living out in the country that can't be dependent on a flaky electrical grid that usually gets turned off many times, especially if you're living in California, which has already implemented this plan. But with the government getting rid of gas stove and heating, this essentially also gives them the arbitrary right and power to cut off your access to energy anytime they want. They can't do it if you're dependent on gas, but if you're dependent on electric, they could target you, they could single you out, and they could shut off your basic access to heating, to cooking, and to living a life. And I think this is the larger end goal here, which complies with the larger Great Reset, Build Back Better agenda of total control and total compliance under the threat of 5,000 armed officers that will be targeting people who dare to question this larger agenda. And no matter what the consequences, we will still question the agenda here, and we do it a lot more on LukeUncensored.com. New video available for you right now. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.